Hello, I'm Mandi McLeod. Welcome to Straight Talk. Coming up in the program, from chaos to coordination, we ask how the red meat sector strategy will change what some claim has been inconsistent and unsatisfactory profitability to bigger and better profits for red meat farmers. Meantime, the dairy industry undergoes its own review. The question is it really necessary? And what outcomes can we expect? And with the consumer spotlight on milk pricing, we ask if dairy farmers need to do a better job explaining their business systems and profit drivers at the farm gate to a price-conscious public. Joining me today is Mike Petersen, Chairman of Beef and Lamb New Zealand, and Mandi McLean, a dairy farmer and Fonterra Shareholders Council member. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Mike, you've described the current situation of the red meat sector strategy issues as changing mindsets, attitudes and relationships as much as about changing physical things. Can you tell us what you mean by this?
Yes, well, that's right, Mandi. This has been a huge piece of work, and in fact, Deloitte, who did the work on our behalf, said it's the most comprehensive piece of work done for our sector. And certainly, when you look at what's needed, much of this is about farmers and the rest of the industry focusing on what they can control, rather than focusing on the things they can't. And what I mean by that is often we blame the weather and we blame the exchange rate and we blame the government for, the inconsistent profitability we've had. But the report quite categorically states that if we focus on what we can control, then we can make the changes that need to be made.
Mike, that sounds so obvious, right? And this is a report that's been prepared, I know, in consultation with farmers and the industry. But we're talking about a massive paradigm shift on farm.
The difference here, though, Mandi, is it's backed up with incredible data and analysis. So this is not just a feel-good report. We've got incredible amount of data. We've identified the size of the prize. And so now it's really up to farmers and the rest of the industry to take on board the three themes that have been identified and put them into practice.
And those three themes?
Well, they're really simple. We're talking about, firstly, in the market, much greater in-market collaboration, and that will come as no surprise to many, but that's clearly number one. Secondly is around the procurement, so that's improving the interface between the farm gate and the processing sector. And thirdly is the adoption of best practice right throughout the industry. And best practice is easy because it's currently already being done.
Neil, my gosh, this sounds very, very much like Fonterra and the dairy industry. What do you think?
Wow, welcome to the new century, Mike. They have issues that we at Fonterra don't have, which is people have choices. Fonterra or dairy farmers have to get milk processed within 72 hours, otherwise they ain't got a product. And that's an issue that allows the mine to be focused and the supply lines to be tight and markets to be organised, all of the things that Mike's talking about. We have to do, otherwise we ain't got a sale.
And as dairy farmers, we've been doing this since day dot.
Yep.
This is going to be such a new concept for sheep and beef farmers, really, isn't it? This whole coordination of the industry.
It has to happen.
It has to happen, but what is it going to take, and what strategies? Well, first of all, what advice would you have for Mike and the red meat sector in terms of getting that paradigm shift? Because we know, even if we talk about best practice in any industry, we're talking about mind shifts, and they're very, very hard to get.
Well, a subject close to your heart, Mandi, sustainability. I mean, you've seen the debate in the last 12 months. I was at the Fonterra Farmers Network last week and we had a panel discussion talking about sustainability. The room accepted the principles. They were demanding answers. What do you want from us? Now, you wouldn't have got that 10 years ago. You would have got it right. And so you're going to just see change, and change will be gradual.
And for us, best practice is about best practice sustainability practice, it's best practice farming systems, and that's what needs to happen.
Just putting the thing out there in front.
Yes, yeah. Look, Neil referred to the Fonterra model. Of course, the dairy industry and the sheep and beef sector coming from the opposite ends, where the dairy industry came from a regulated statutory single desk marketing board, and of course we don't have that. Now, importantly, the report is very clear that the structure of the industry is not an impediment to making the change that can occur. And so that's quite a significant statement, saying that the current structure of the industry can allow the changes to be made and the opportunity to be realised. So that's good news.
That's really good news.
Just looking at numbers over the last 40 years and being a dairy farmer, I look at the amount that I get from my meat check. That really has gone backwards compared to my dairy check. In fact, some data from Mike's service, I've got to say, so it's got to be a reputable source. If you take out inflation and pegged meat schedule price against foreign exchange spot rates, it's been $3 for the last 40 years. I mean, that's not sustainable. That's got to change. People have got to say, we need to be in control of our supply lines. We need to be demanding better from our processors, marketers, that brings more money back inside the country.
Neil, that raises a really interesting point. Dairy farmers are part of the red meat sector strategy. Cull cows, bobby calves, the bulls that don't work in the paddock end up in Mike's court. Why are we being so passive?
Because
do we not identify ourselves as being part of it?
Most probably, and the main source or outlet for the meat industry, from my concern, is my 4-day-old bull calves that have been going to the Hawke's Bay. We've had a guy that's come through regularly for the 10 years or more, and then 2 years ago he stopped coming. Those calves last year were worth $20. I mean, at that time of the year, time is a premium, and dairy farmers are just not going to sit around and wait for the meat industry to get their act together.
So Mike, just following on from that, we're talking about the dairy industry. Where is the dairy industry review at?
Well, it's in a lot of places at the moment.
Are we going from coordination to chaos?
Oh no, Fonterra is still 90% of the milk share of the milk, and it's still the main player in the game. There are going to be competitors come in, and we're going to meet them head on.
So that's a review that's been that's taken place in the last 2 weeks or so, has been about Fonterra reviewing its own strategies to meet.
And how it relates to within the new government is
the Dairy Industry Reform Act.
Yeah, is rightly concerned that there's free entry, free exit, and Fonterra doesn't abuse its monopoly powers. And that's, from farmers' point of view, that's really the where we want to be. And as farmers, we accept that. I mean, we accept DIRA being passed in the first place so that we could form Fonterra. The only debate, really, from our perspective, is eligibility. How can an overseas company produce milk or get milk from Fonterra in New Zealand, export it, and take all the profits offshore? That doesn't make much sense to me.
Mike, do you think that we have enough advocacy for farmers in New Zealand at the farm gate? And this would be a classic example of that, where I think the public doesn't understand what it is to be a dairy farmer or a sheep and cattle farmer. We've got federated farmers who do a really good job of advocating for us at a political level. And we've got our own, beef and lamb and the dairy industry, etc. But do our public really understand what it takes to produce a kilo of meat and a litre of milk?
Well, no, they don't. But this is not just a New Zealand problem. This is a global problem. So, interestingly, when you do the survey work, urban people are very, very supportive of the rural communities and farmers. So, we need to probably play a greater role in improving that connection. I think it's a connection that's missing, and the understanding. I mean, you talk to kids these days. Milk comes out of a bottle. It doesn't come from a cow. So, we do need to improve that. But we're starting from a pretty good position.
Mike, what's your thought on it? We've got No Milk Monday. Does that really signal to me, that doesn't really signal to me that farmers, that the public understands?
Yeah, No Milk Monday. I struggled with that concept. I mean, it's, I'm pausing because I'm struggling to see the relevance, actually.
So what I'm hearing from the two of you is that, yes, whilst our public is supportive, there could be more advocacy from the likes of Fonterra to really understanding the price of milk at the farm gate level. Thanks, guys. After the break, could we see a rerun of Return of the Living Dead as AgResearch digs deep to explain why they may not have disposed of genetically engineered corpses appropriately? And storm-hit Hawke's Bay farmers will now get government assistance, but with many having lost up to 60% of their topsoil, we ask if taxpayers should ante up more money. All this and more when we return. Welcome back to Straight Talk. According to Country 99 TV News, AgResearch is under fire from Canterbury University for not taking into account concerns by Irma and disposing appropriately of their genetically modified corpses. Despite having access to the draft report 7 months ago, AgResearch is still searching for their answers. Neil, this is right on your back door. Does it concern you about the horizontal transfer of genetically modified organisms?
No. I... Being part of the AgResearch fraternity and knowing people in there, you have to trust that they would undertake the right processes and they'll do the right checks and balances. I can't be everywhere to check everything. I have to trust.
So it's not likely we're going to see a Return of the Living Dead scenario with these weird forms, mutilated sheep popping up?
Well, they'll be dealing to the Ruakura site before they get to me, and the problem will be solved before it gets to me.
Seriously though, Mike, do you see this as being a threat for New Zealand's GE-free status?
Well, I don't, as far as this issue goes, but certainly for our sector, we have a policy where we don't support genetically modified organisms in the food chain, and that's largely because our customers aren't accepting of it. The issue I think that's going to be a real one, and one we need to discuss, is the issue of genetically modified feeds. And certainly some of the research that both the dairy and the sheep and beef sector is undertaking looks at cisgenics, which is not the sort of Frankenstein model of GE. It's literally working within a single species and turning genes on and off. And that's, I think, possibly where the opportunity is for New Zealand.
Neil, in the dairy industry, we've had grasses modified since pretty much year dot.
Yep.
What's the difference?
It's very interesting discussion. I mean, and the discussion, just to get off topic, but the one I'd love to have is we're having a debate between a feed that will modify greenhouse gases but is genetically modified. I would like the community to tell me where their point of balance is, what we should do.
Where their priorities are.
Where the priorities are, what's the best use of that information. That's, going back to the earlier topic, we have to engage the community to see where we can farm, how we can farm, and on the other side, community has to understand the pressures, the debates that we have to have within it to deliver the lifestyle that they desire.
So do you think that Canterbury University has potentially been a bit mischievous with this, or has AgResearch been a little bit lax in not responding to the draft report that supposedly they were given 7 months ago? I mean, what's...
Yeah.
There we go. No, I won't say that. No, I won't. I won't say these games have been played, but I just did.
Well, look, this is a tough decision politically, I know, but I think we do need to look at new tools, to improve the pace of breeding, and that's what GE can be. If I look at my part of the world, we're in an area that suffers from summer dries and droughts. The prospect of technologies that can improve the drought tolerance of our pastures is extremely attractive to us, and would increase the sustainability and viability of our sector in our area. So, it's a new tool. We shouldn't rule ourselves out of science and progress. It's incredibly important for our sector. So, we've got to look at that, but we've got to be responsible in doing that as well.
Got to bring the community with us.
I was going to say, so it's really about consumer education around. Yeah. It's not necessarily about genetically modified cereals directly entering our food chain. No. It's about internal modifications or plant breeding strategies. And maybe that we need to start being more judicious around the use of GE and GM. Considering I think that I'm a genetic improvement of my parents.
Yeah.
Although some may argue.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Neil, let's not go there.
Yeah, I paused.
Mike, the recent storms in the Hawke's Bay, that's your turf, that's your home turf. You know, the worst case scenario that we're hearing is 60% of loss of land in some farms. Is the government doing enough?
Oh, look, I mean, this has been a severe event. You know, we're talking 10 minutes from where I live, 530 mils of rain in 48 hours. So this is an extremely serious event, actually quite localised, you know, for when you look up the whole East Coast. But for those that have been hit, this is a major issue. This is a 10-year program to try and get some of that country right. And some of that will never come right.
So 10 years didn't sound very long to me when I looked at the devastation on screen.
Yeah. Look, the reality is there's very little the government can do, you know. So what they can do is around Task Force Green and helping with the clean-up. That's clearly an issue. Some of the income equalisation schemes that can be put in place for people that have to sell capital stock is absolutely something that they can do and are doing. I would say the government's actually done a good job responding. Task Force Green is starting to get underway, and then I'm heading to a meeting this afternoon where we are talking about the practical measures on the ground from the local East Coast Rural Support Trust.
And the Rural Support Trust are doing an amazing job. In our experience from Waikato Haraki, we possibly don't get to all the people that we need to get. Neil, do you think farmers are potentially their own worst enemy when it comes to being stoic?
Heroic.
Heroic is a fantastic word.
Yeah. I mean, there's someone worse off than me. That's always the first response that you get from somebody who's in crisis. And they're always looking to say, well, go and talk to so-and-so down the road because whatever. But it's the network that the farmers have with their friends, family, professional people who just have to put a phone call in and just say, you're okay. And that's all that you can do, and just to let people know that they haven't been forgotten. We saw an example of that with the Christchurch earthquake.
We did. Mike, what can we do as the greater agricultural community to support these farmers, to let them know that whilst it's been an isolated activity, that we support them, and whilst it's not on potentially the same power of devastation as the Canterbury earthquakes, for these farmers in their own situation, it must be incredibly devastating. Is there anything that we can do in the greater community?
Well, look, at the moment, even getting to some of those farms is challenging. So, look, the community's rallying around. There's no doubt about that, and the support trust locally is getting very involved. And so, technical days, certainly support for helping with the clean-up is underway. But the reality is there's not many other things that people can do from wider New Zealand. You know, it's we just need to get on with the clean-up and support those people who have been badly affected. Well,
I'm sure when you go down to your meeting this afternoon, you'll take the best wishes of Country 99 TV with you to those people, and if there's anything that we can do to let them know we care, we're there.
Absolutely.
Now, from one disaster zone to another, Afghanistan. Minister McLeod wants to set up a New Zealand Inc. project in Afghanistan farming. I'm struggling to get my head around this. I'm struggling to think about where in New Zealand might be applicable to Afghanistan. Maybe the Desert Road, maybe Alexandria. I'm not really sure. Apologies to those people in those areas. What do you guys think about this? What can we offer Afghanistan?
Well, I'll have a crack first.
Oh, good-o.
Heard an interesting talk from Ray Avery last week. And from an outsider looking in, summing up his idea of the New Zealand person is that they've got a can-do, solve-the-problem type attitude. Putting aside the war and all of that in Afghanistan, I think practical advice, practical farming, people going in there and saying, what can I do to help? Show me how I can help. And those skills that they've learnt on the New Zealand farm would be applicable. I'm not saying it would be safe to go there, that's a different game, but I'm sure they could help.
Yeah, I think it's a worthy idea of pursuing, and so Minister McCulley, in proposing the idea, has probably looked at the provincial reconstruction team in that Bamiyan province, and he's looked at the way that they've been able to connect with the locals, and they've actually been able to build trust. And how can we then spread that to agriculture and helping them develop their agricultural systems? So
grow their income.
Exactly.
I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to come out of it, given that Afghanistan's greatest agricultural produce is opium poppies at the moment.
Yes,
Thanks, guys. Coming up after the break, we ask Neil and Mike what's got them hot under the collar. Will it be a rant or will it be a rave? We'll tell all after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Straight Talk. Time now for our weekly rant or rave. Neil, you've got a boomer for us apparently.
I have. I could talk about the Fonterra capital structure, but I won't. I could talk about sustainability, but I won't. What I'm going to talk about is what Fonterra shareholders and staff did for Christchurch. In the space of a week, there was thick end of $5 million donated from Fonterra shareholders, staff, overseas and in New Zealand. And that's gone to support the telethon, which we should mention, 22nd of May. Bring up or build up Christchurch. And that is just an indication of how the farmers actually feel connected to the rest of the community. And
$5 million is a significant amount in anybody's book.
it's about 10%, I think, of the Merrill Fund. And that's a large amount. And it was done without any fuss, any grandstanding. And I think there's big congratulations, ups, or whatever the term is, for those people who just said they need something, I've got something to give. And they've done it.
I think that's a significant point, Neil, isn't it? That it was done without any grandstanding and a big media beat up. It was very just happened. It was very genuine. It wasn't done for publicity or anything like that.
I think it even surprised the board how much actually came in from shareholders unasked. It was, I think the original intention was we'll put up $1 million and we'll match another $1 million. And by the end of the weekend, I think there was 1.7 donated. So
massive.
Massive.
Good on you, Fonterra and shareholders. That's well done, Mike. 3 guesses as to what you're going to talk about.
You know it, Mandy, don't you? Well, I have to rave about the sector strategy, don't I, for the red meat sector? And,
you do really.
You're allowed.
Yeah, I know I am. Look, I just want to reiterate the point. This is quite a turning point for our sector. We are now in the process of having a plan for the sector to take us to the next level. But nothing will happen in this if farmers and the wider industry don't pick up the outcomes of this report and make the changes that need to be made. So the challenge is that, you've always got lots of cynics and people wanting to, offer a criticism, or here we go, it's another report that'll sit by the door. That's exactly right. But I would just say, look, this is the most comprehensive piece of work being done for the sector. This has been also backed up by independent work that's been done by Deloitte. So this is not just the sector's views, but also good independent and outside work as well. And so if you're saying, look, this is a waste of time, you're effectively saying the industry is a waste of time. Read the report, look at the recommendations, pick them up and adopt them because that's the only way the industry will progress.
Well, I'm going to have a wee rant. No, I'm going to have a rave. Woo! Hold cameras. I am going to have a rave. I want to rave about both industries. I want to rave about the fact that this looks like we're on the point of disruptive change. Disruptive change being where the future for tomorrow doesn't look like it was today. We've got Fonterra standing up and making a stand against the dairy and saying enough is enough. We don't want to have our milk given to offshore milk processing companies. And we've got the red meat sector strategy saying we want to increase profitability and make it consistent and sustainable. And these are really big events that, if we carry them off, will revolutionise both our industries. And I think that's fantastic that it's actually starting to happen. And maybe that it's a sign of maturity in both of our sectors. So congratulations to both of you as representatives of both those industries. And I really look forward, Mike, to seeing how this red meat sector strategy is going to play out, because I think you've got a really long road ahead of you with getting some mind shift, some changes. I think the dairy industry can offer a lot and potentially allow us to refocus on our own industry. So I'm really excited. And by the way, well done on a great report. Thanks, guys. That's it for our latest edition of Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. I'd like to thank my guests, Mike Petersen and McLean. And thanks to you too for watching. Remember to check out my blog online at country99tv.co.nz. I love hearing from you. Catch you next week, and in the meantime, keep on talking straight.